In this episode, we're turning the dial back to 1995 with an album and an artist that seemingly came out of thin air to dominate the charts, MTV, and have one of the biggest selling albums of all time. Jagged Little Pill from Alanis Morrissette is up next.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff. And Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, and one and all, and even if you're not a friend, welcome to the 3324 podcast, because if you're listening, you're now officially a friend.
That's right.
You've made it into the friend zone. So welcome to the 3324 podcast friend zone.
And speaking of friends, we keep adding to the roster.
Another guest. Eric, if it's a new year, we got to get new guests. That's
right.
It.
That's right.
We don't get rid of the old guests. We pile them in also. This is going to be like one of those college hazing things where they stuff all the people into a phone booth. Like, we're going to get all the guests together, just push them into the booth. So we've got a new guest, and we've got one of our first guests as well. So, but before we get to that, if you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead, like and subscribe. Go do that so you get notified whenever we've got something new coming out. If you're listening on your favorite podcast provider, go ahead and hit the follow button there, and they'll let you know when new episodes come out. I'll give you a hint. It's every Thursday, but it's nice that you get the notification from your app as well. This way you don't have to remember what I said by the end of the episode, because I'm not going to repeat it. That's one and done. So we've got a great episode on the way. We've got a new guest. Let's go with the new guest first. Welcome, Courtney Cremeans. Courtney, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Glad to have you on. Here she is.
She is the wife of our frequent guest, Metallica lover, and artist extraordinaire, Mr. Andrew Cremeans. And she is the older sister by 3 minutes of my wife, Kelly. So welcome, Courtney. We're so pleased to have you here. So,
Thank you so much.
Yep.
That 3 minutes has made all the difference, I'm sure. Throughout your life was saying, I'm the oldest.
Oh, yeah.
So.
That's another story. That's a whole other podcast right there.
The most important 3 minutes in history.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, rounding out our guests is Ms. Christy Cuomo. Welcome aboard as well. Christy, how are you?
I am well. Thank you for having me.
Always a
Doing
pleasure.
Good?
Thank you, Eric.
Everything's good?
Everything's honky-dory.
Honky-dory. Good.
Honky-dory. Okay.
Yeah.
Honky-dory.
That's a new one.
All right.
But hey, we're going to go for it. So listen, we've got two experts for this episode, because Eric and I are I think we're
lame. I mean,
no, we love this album. I think we love this album, but I think we needed some people that were really close to it. Hopefully these two guests are going to help guide us through it as well, and share their experiences with this album. So let's get into it. Let's get into the stats. This album is Jagged Little Pill from Alanis Morrissette. Alanis Morissette, released in June of 1995. All the lyrics by Alanis Morissette. The music was written by Alanis Morissette and Glenn Ballard, and the album was produced by Glenn Ballard. There were 6 singles released off this album. In order, You Ought to Know hit number 6. You Learn hit number 6. Hand in My Pocket was released, but to radio stations only, so it did not chart, but it was released to radio stations. Ironic hit number 4. Head Over Feet and All I Really Want also were radio-only singles, so they were not eligible for chart. They weren't released in a format that they could track sales. Right? Next up, it hit number 1 on the Billboard charts. Here we go, Eric. 17 times platinum.
Monster.
That's she's in the Diamond Club. She was the youngest artist ever to be certified Diamond she held that crown until Britney Spears. With Hit Me Baby, with one more, was it Baby One More Time? Then, because that thing just became a monster, and Britney was younger than Alanis Morissette was when she attained Diamond status, but Alanis Morissette was the youngest to do it. 17 times platinum, right? So that's 17 million US, but 33 million worldwide, which makes this the 13th best-selling album of all time. 13th best-selling album of all time.
And also the second best-selling by a female artist. Is that correct? Yep. And I think she, who was number one? Shania Twain?
Shania Twain.
Yeah.
Yep. With Come On Over.
Mm-hmm.
Has it. Won 4 Grammys, Best Female Rock Performance, Best Rock Song, Best Rock Album, and Album of the Year. Take those, every day and twice on Sundays with, for that. That's a nice collection of hardware to take home, especially Best Rock Album and Album of the Year.
Yeah.
So before we dive in, just a little prehistory about Alanis Morissette, so we can kind of catch our guests up to where they come into this. Before this album came out in 1995, she's a Canadian born and since has become a U.S. citizen, but she was a dance pop artist compared in Canada to the likes of Debbie Gibson and Tiffany.
Yeah.
Before this album, she was on a Nickelodeon show. You can't do that on television. So she was in like that kind of pop, like just like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, like on the Mickey Mouse Club, and then they kind of transitioned into like a pop thing. Alanis Morissette kind of did the same thing. Those albums were they were only released in Canada. The first one did okay. Her second one didn't do as well, so she got dropped by her label. She was without a label. Eventually got hooked up with Glenn Ballard. She got picked up by Maverick, which is a subsidiary of Warner Brothers, but that is Madonna's label. Just for a little bit of history, Maverick Records is
prestige label as it's known. Yeah.
At the time, at the time, Maverick, Madonna kind of creates the Maverick label and starts signing artists.
I think it's funny too that this album is considered her debut. Nobody ever says U.S. debut. It's her debut. Even though technically it's her third album, but it's but people refer to it as her debut.
Yeah, it's her major label debut because those other ones were only released in Canada, but it's certainly not her. That's why she couldn't get Best New Artist. So she hooks up with Glenn Ballard. They immediately connect. He says there's something about this young girl because she was only at the time when they started this, 93, 94. She was 20. Like 19 years old, 19, 20 years old, kind of in that area. And he said that there's something about this person, her, the way she writes, her kind of how well connected she is to what she wants to say. Their goal was to write and record one song a day. And they largely did that. And they pretty much did it. And Alanis Morissette did it in 1 or 2 takes. And then when they went to go create the rest of the album, if they did have to do like musical re-recordings or overdubs, they still were able to she didn't re-record anything. She used her original demo and vocals that they recorded at that time in the beginning of it. So, kind of a neat story that, they kind of, built this whole thing that, they had the idea, we're going to write a song a day. We're going to get through it. We're going to knock it out. Maverick was hoping, hey, you know what, if we make the money back, to make enough money to get her a second album, like we'll be happy. That'll be kind of cool. That was not to be, unfortunately. She sold more. She made enough to make like many albums. So it was not a concern after a certain amount of time. So
although the head of Maverick at the time, I guess was very taken with her. I mean, it's not like they didn't doubt her at all. I mean, I think it was Perfect, the song Perfect that did it, that won him over, the demo of that song, I believe. And he was just like, we need to sign her right away. I mean, she's just, so but that's the way it goes, I guess. But
I mean, you can have the best of intentions for artists and they could be really great, but if it doesn't connect, that's the way the business works. But this did connect. So let's start to bring in Courtney first. Why don't you kind of give us a little of put yourself back into the 1995 headspace if you can. And what was going on with you and how did you kind of come to this album?
Yeah. So the way that I found Alanis was, of course, on MTV. I considered her like the aesthetic, like the Muppet aesthetic in that video for You Ought to Know, like just living it and, just being in the moment. I didn't have cable then, so I actually saw it at my now husband, my then boyfriend, grandparents' house. And I saw that video and I was like, who is this? Like, it's amazing. So that was my introduction. And then Andy bought me the album and nonstop played that, and then we'll probably get to this later. But when you found that hidden track on that CD and it was, just that raw, like, it felt like to me, this is what's next. Like there was the album and there was that. But as far as the, repetition of play for like 2 years in a row, but it was funny going back and listening. I think music does this in so many ways, but you go back and have those feelings that when you listen to it the first time, and it was amazing. Yeah. So I mean, it was it was right at the right time. I was graduating high school. She was right, probably out of like, I was 18. She was like 20, you could feel like those wantingness of belonging and perfect, and like the wantingness of like the different relationships that you've been through, and it just how she spoke to like your heart. But that was my introduction.
Right. Christy?
I don't remember if it was MTV or radio, how I found Alanis, but when I think it was like the first song I might have heard was You Ought to Know, and it was kind of like Courtney. I was 18. I was the right age, and it was not like anything I ever heard before. It was someone who was talking about things I was feeling, right? So we had Madonna, and we had, like you said before, you referenced Debbie Gibson and these other people, but this was someone new. This was someone who was just like, she came on and it was just, holy shit, what's happening right now? And talking about things that people, again, we look a lot of times when we have these podcasts where we're looking, we can't look through, we're in 2024, and you have to go back to 1995 and look through that scope of things. And there's a lot of things that we just didn't talk about. And here's someone who's kind of talking about stuff, talking about religion and talking about relationships and codependency and looking for intellectual relationships. And you're like, at that age that we were, you need this, you're searching for this. And so I don't know how I found her, or how she came into my life, but I was grateful. And one of my all-time favorite albums, I've listened to it probably since I knew we were doing this podcast. I'm not exaggerating. I probably have listened to it 20 times, never tire of it. I love every song. And much like Courtney, like I'm driving my car and I'm like 18 years old again, and I'm screaming the lyrics of some of these songs. Like, I
hope you were alone.
I was alone, and the windows were up, but you are brought back, and you're just like, you feel like not many albums and in its entirety. And I really hope you don't make me pick a favorite song, can make you feel.
Oh, we're going to go there.
This alive, and really just bring it there. And this album absolutely does it for me.
So,
and
Courtney,
to me, it's a perfect album.
How important was
absolutely.
it, Courtney, that Alanis was the same age as you, and not someone who was 20 years older, kind of writing songs, about maybe about past experiences, but how important was it that this was pretty much the same age and kind of was expressing these things? Almost, the way I think about it is, she's almost like picking at scars or scabs, right? Like she, like to Christy's point of things that are uncomfortable or might be uncomfortable, or things that you don't really talk about. How important was her being a contemporary of yours to you?
Yeah, it was amazing, because it was like, I mean, if you look back at the people our age during that time period, Debbie Gibson, it was also saccharine. It was also like, oh, we're going to, we're doing this, we're doing that. And even if it was a cover of a song that was a little bit darker, they put this poppy spin on it this was raw. This was, how she's feeling about this situation. And a lot of the songs I internalized, like, she's talking about maybe her parents not thinking she's perfect, but in my mind, I'm talking to myself, like, you're not good enough, you're not doing this. but it's okay. Other people have those feelings and they're working through it just like you are. And so like those like gut wrenching like songs like Mary Jane and like all those like the ones that give you like those, you can feel it that she's thought about this. And even if she had help writing them each day, like, you know, that she's had that in her soul for some time and it just had to come out. And that's how it happened so organically and quickly. And like, and being like you said, being our age, I feel like, and she also was in the industry for so long that a lot of those songs were talking about how she was taken advantage of. And like, and even if I didn't necessarily have that, I knew that those were going on in our, like, in our scope of age, you know, like people were being taken care of, being taken advantage of. And some people just needed to have an outlet to get that out. And those songs with the ability to just scream them at the universe, like, that was our outlet. That was our ability to like say, hey world, do you see us now? Like, these are our thoughts.
Because nobody was saying that.
No.
Right?
Well,
especially women at that time.
Well,
It was just
100%.
very, so,
100% to, you know, like Courtney's right. Like, you look at, everyone was so poppy and girly and girlish, and nobody was talking about real issues. And then here comes Alanis, who literally went to, like, I think the first thing with Glenn Ballard with her sweater on backwards and inside out. Like, literally, whereas, like, I'm going to my sweatpants. I'm not getting dressed up like this. You're getting me as I am, and you're getting me raw and with my scars and with all, like, I'm just going to bare my soul. And we didn't really have too much of that. Like, it was either you had Madonna, who I loved at the time, you know, like her early stuff, who was shocking and kind of, you know, challenging in that way. And then you had Poppy and I'm a good girl. And that's just, it wasn't reality. And yeah, like, you listen to Right Through You, and it's almost like a precursor to, like, #MeToo. Like, you know, you take a long hard look at my ass and then go play golf for a while. Like, she wasn't afraid. Like, she was fearless. And at 20 years old, in that time period, you can't put your nose up to that. That's amazing that she did what she did. And she opened so many doors to so many artists.
Yeah, I mean, she pretty much put everybody on blast, including herself, including former lovers, including the record company. And I'm looking at albums that came out in 1995, to your point. And these are, this is just like a quick Google search of top albums of 1995. Aside from this album, the only other two albums or artists of kind of that were popular that year was Daydream from Mariah Carey and Tragic Kingdom from No Doubt. Those are the two only other big albums, and Garbage, I think Garbage's debut album. But they weren't and you said Madonna, and Madonna tries to be usually provocative for provocative's sake. Yeah. She does have something to say, but she does it in a way that kind of is
more sexualizing.
And it's more sexual. It's more for shock value.
You don't feel that it's personal. You don't feel that she's looking inward. And with this album, and we talked about it on the Jewel episode, where Jewel was to kind of follow this introspection. And that's where Christy kind of comes, makes the point that this kind of opened up something new for women that were allowed to kind of be this way. You could, say men are, that men are sons of bitches, and that they're pieces of crap, and that they do shitty things, and it's, because guys lament it all the time in music or any, especially in country music. But yeah, this was something. I don't want to say abrasive, but bracing, meaning that because she wasn't.
It couldn't be ignored.
She wasn't couching couching the lyrics in.
No, you couldn't.
It wasn't like double talk, or she wasn't using metaphors. I'm sure she perfect.
I am sure she has probably at first, has gotten, sort of pushback from it. It's like, there's no way that you've been through all of this being so young. And I'm sure she probably had that. But the fact that she had all these songs written, which leads me to the story that, I don't know if you guys heard the story about her, coming to LA. the first 10 minutes she was there, apparently she got held up by somebody by gunpoint. And all she had was a small bag of all the money that she had saved to come to LA, and a bag of her lyrics of the songs. And all she was thinking the whole time was, please don't take my lyrics. Please don't, because this album probably wouldn't have been, because there was a lot of material there. There's a lot of emotion there. There's a lot of experience in that bag. And she, she goes, yeah, take my money, take what. And luckily the guy like told her to lay down on the ground, and she took the other bag and she like kind of tucked it in, and she laid down, and luckily the guy didn't, he just ran off with the cash and left, so I mean we're lucky there.
Yeah, sure. Eric, are you sure? Are you sure that thief wasn't Steve Miller? He took the money and ran. No? Oh, come on, that was a good one.
But the fact it was okay. I'll give you that one. It was these songs were so legit.
Yeah,
and all you need to do is listen to how she sings them, and you're there. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no phoniness here. There's nothing. There's no pretense here. It's all her. I mean, yeah, we'll get to that, in a little bit, because I really want to get into the how she sings, and so that's a whole nother.
Well, that's what I was going to start to talk about. Part of the allure and what people liked, and what Glenn Ballard and I think one of the people that she met before that introduced her to Glenn Ballard was taken that she's a really good singer. Mm-hmm. She could, and she's got a unique. It's probably more pervasive on this album than on later albums, but she's got when I listened to it, I wrote in my notes shades of Sinead O'Connor, because she does that little lilting, yodeling thing at the end of lyrics. At the end of a sentence, she'll kind of do that. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, she kind of lilts up her notes. But even
goes, she goes up, her register is up. She's got range,
but even on the end, it'll go up on certain lyrics, which kind of reminded me of Sinead O'Connor, the way that her singing is based on her Celtic upbringing. Mm-hmm. So that made her also unique, but then her just regular singing on songs like Perfect and some of the other songs where I actually like listening to those songs because you could just hear her voice pure, but even on that song, singing.
Even on that song though, when she kicks in and says, you're going to screw it up. I mean, her voice gets loud in that moment. And that's what, the guy from Maverick was, he had said that's what did it right there was that emotional range just from this really tender, quiet, soft-spoken, she sang so beautifully and then all of a sudden that kicks in and then goes back.
Her passion's there. Like her passion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because
she's telling a story. She's communicating this
and
stuff.
She means it. Like you can't, we can tend to be dismissive, especially now that we're older, but she was 20 years old. And like, to your point, Eric, it's like, you could look at a 20-year-old and be like, the fuck, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Right. But she did. She did because she was doing what good writers do. And she was writing about what she knew at that moment. And this is what she knew.
And I would argue at that age, you feel it so much more.
Yes, 100%. Because you don't have all this shit weighing you down. Like you're like everything is do or die when you're 20. Yeah, right? Like every relationship is the greatest and then the worst heartache.
Very angsty.
Yes. Yeah, but you need that. Like that makes great artists. Like it really does.
Well, that's the first thing that's the first thing I when I first heard You Ought to Know, which of course, that being the first single from the record and the radio stations were playing it endlessly. And it was just like, it's a little intimidating as a guy, especially an older guy, to hear a song like that and to be like, oh, this isn't going to really sell. It's not going to make me want to go out and buy this album like necessarily. That's definitely not me.
You.
But
you were not the target audience, Eric.
There was several other, but unfortunately, some people have had to wear that target on their back, but it's just, but when it got to You Learn, that's what it did it for me, because you could have a song like You Ought to Know. It's so specific and so, just a really specific situation. And then you get to You Learn, which is more about I feel like that's kind of sums up the whole record in a way. almost like that could have been should have been the last track on the album.
100% disagree with you. Oh my
really?
God.
Okay.
Oh, I wanted to talk about this, and maybe it's a little early, but you ought to know, and you have this. She's devastated by this relationship with. We all know who it is, but she's devastated by this relationship. It broke her heart. She's young. He's an older version of her, and then you go through this journey with her, and you deal with religion. You deal with people who aren't on your intellectual level. You deal with Mary Jane, who is like, why are you trying to be so perfect for who? Who are you? And then you go through all these songs, and then you get to Your House, and it's a cappella, and for lack of a better word, there's no noise, right? Because it's a cappella, and her voice is different, and it's the calm after the storm. Like when I heard that song after listening to the album, and you get that long break before the song just kicks in.
Well, I wasn't referring to the hidden track. I was referring to the.
Oh no! Well, I'm talking about the album in its totality. Okay. You get to that song, and it's almost like you're with her, and you're like, okay, I got that out of my system. What's next? And for me personally, with Alanis, our journeys have been the same, because the next album is supposed infatuation junkie, right? And all of a sudden we're in India, and we're talking about spirituality,
enlightenment,
and we're not angry anymore. And I was literally on the same path with her, just timing wise, in getting rid of my angst and moving forward. So when you take You Ought to Know and you end with Your House, I'm like, that's why it's literally one of the most perfect albums. It's not a rock opera, right? But it's a complete. It's a
document. It's a document, right, Courtney? It's a documentation of what this person is going through, and that's the beauty. Does it track with you as well?
100%. Well, what I was going to say was, if you look at my album wall, we have an album wall. Andy's picked a certain amount. I've picked a certain amount. 99% of mine are movie scores. I've got Dirty Dancing. I've got The Greatest Showman. I've got Little Mermaid. I've got Hamilton, Grease, The Interview. Because I can listen to those and listen to my story, like the story that I was. With this album, it was a complete story for me. That's why I can listen beginning to end. And I grasp the little bits of, she was in this phase. And I remember that phase of my life. Yeah. And she was dealing with, coming to terms. I think that I don't want to say the funniest, but the song that really gets me is, what is it? Head Over Feet. Because you take that as such a sweet song, like, you're doing your everything I want you to be, but I don't get that she's going to be with that person. That's not the person that is the love. Like, he's doing everything right, but I know that I remember the relationship. I
totally agree. Watch the video. The video says it all. If you watch that video, she just kind of staring out into space, and she's just not even. All the lyrics aren't coming out of her mouth. She's so expressive, even in those music videos. That's what really sold it. Yeah, for me as well, was just to, wow, you're just very taken with that story. And
but starting from, You Ought to Know, where you're so angry at the person that hurt you so deeply, and this person's not hurting you at all, but it's almost worse.
Mm-hmm. To your point, Courtney, it's just because we're traveling with her, and most of us know, if you're in a relationship and you get shit on, you get hurt, and then you get into another relationship and this person's super nice to you, you're like suspect. Because you're like waiting for the hammer to fall until you kind of get a little bit more experience in life. And you're like, some people just aren't assholes. Like, they're not. Right? I felt the same, like that. That's a great song.
Yeah, and I think to Eric's point, he talked about some of this stuff might not be accessible to guys or men, but obviously this resonated somehow, because it wasn't 33 million women. Yeah, I don't think it was 33 million women.
Yeah, Andy bought the album for me, so
yeah. I think it also resonates with. I just think generally because some of the things she talks about they're about relationships, and they can be universal. There are probably plenty of guys that have had that kind of stuff happen or feel that way, that they're not good enough for their girlfriend, or what am I doing? So I think that on its surface, it would look like, wow, who is this for? Or you're alienating half your audience. But it turns out, like we said, 33 million copies later, she was right about laying herself bare, especially in 95, when you've got grunge ramping up, and that's what that type of music is about. That it's kind of about tackling kind of tough, subjects that aren't so fun to talk about. So I think she hit at the right point also by releasing this as a rock album, because it is certainly, squarely in the rock and roll, maybe / grunge alternative genre. So I think that also kind of gave it that credit of, here's something that is going to swing with Pearl Jam and with what Nirvana was doing. Like here's someone who's a woman who's not afraid to go there, just like how Kurt Cobain would go to dark places, right? With his lyrics, he wasn't afraid to go there. I'm not saying she's the equivalent, but she kind of is doing that as well, right? Christy and Courtney kind of going there, and where, like I said earlier, a guy could, and it would be like, okay.
We addressed this, I think, in the alternative episodes, where the 90s kind of parallel the 70s, right? Where in the 90s, whether we're talking about Alanis or we're talking about Kurt Cobain or Eddie Vedder, we were gonna get into some deep topics, and we weren't going to be afraid anymore, and we were going to talk about drugs, and we were going to talk about addiction, and we were going to talk about religion and abortion, and everything was on the table, because we came from the 80s and everything was kind of like, it's a little poppy, a little happy. And so we got back to the 70s, where the 70s really kind of, they dug in their heels, and they sang about it. So I think that, to your point, Dean, like it was perfect timing for her. And I didn't put her on any of my lists when we did the alternative, because to me, she didn't represent like grunge or alternative. She was more rock to me. But and then to the other thing you were saying is, although men weren't a target audience, and I stand by that, but it's not a blanket statement to say that no man would appreciate it. I just think that majority of it was going to be women. And again, for women to realize, and we get this every so often, because again, women, we're a lot further along than we were in 1995, and we still have ways to go. But it was a nice way for, especially people my age and Courtney's age, to be like, it's okay to be a female and to feel this way. Say no, because and Courtney, maybe this happened too. Like, I don't know if you remember when we were young, like men would say like, and I think about it, I'm like, how weird. Like they would say, like older men would say like, oh, you have a beautiful smile. Like a guy you didn't even know. Just like
no, I would always get that. Why don't you smile? You'd be so much prettier.
Yeah, like all these weird, like these weird things. Or if you do your hair this way, like these like sexualizing things, and it's like it's weird. And then we get Alanis, and we're like, it's okay to tell people to go F themselves. Like, and I can go out of my house without taking a shower if I have to run to the store. I don't always have to look pretty and perfect for society. Right. And that was what she did for us.
Yeah. We as older guys, I mean, Dean and I mean, for me, from my experience with this album is, you cannot deny the emotion of it. And that's enough for us. I mean, we may not be able to relate to some, specifically to what she's saying and what she's targeting. And, but you can't, but it made us listen, made me listen. I got a perspective, like from I've mentioned this several times, where for me, music tends to come first. Like it has to sound good to me. I had to get into it. But this was one of the first albums I ever listened to ever that I actually right up front paid attention to the lyrical content of this, and the way she presented these lyrics, the phrasing, the cadence, the absolute emotion, high and low. It's an album that you just cannot just, you cannot dismiss this record whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think part of it is because she's speaking in a mature way too. That probably people weren't used to a younger songwriter really like tackling these things, but tackling them in a mature. What not? Oh, we broke up, and I'm going to carve my name on a tree. It was more like what what the real feelings are, and some animosity or hurt or I'm pissed off or this wasn't fair. All those things kind of rolled up. Again, those are universal themes, and like I said, you put it on a rock album. I think that's where you kind of grab the rest of the, and maybe it was curiosity from some of the other people too, because this thing, like everybody, like I think Eric said it, like she forced everybody to kind of listen, to kind of, okay, like this is, all girls like Christy and Courtney saying, oh, we don't all wear bows in our hair and are just here waiting for a guy to save us, right? That was, and I think that's part of this message is I'm okay with or without you. Either way, it's I'll figure my way through this. Right? Courtney, is that kind of on the track?
Yeah, I feel like the album's like, I'm dealing with shit. Some of it's your fault. Some of it's my fault. Some of it's the past. But we're all going to figure this out. And this is how I feel about it. So listen if you want to know who I am. And that's kind of like the feeling that I get from, that's just life. That's how you live a life of, fulfilledness, is to look at the past, to speak to the future, to be in the present. It's like, that's just how it is. And she hit on so many different elements that you could just take it and be like, yeah.
And to Eric's point about this being her quote unquote third album, I think that's a blessing, because she came to America and the rest of the world as this. It would have been difficult for someone to make that transition from the bubblegummy pop to all of a sudden, oh, she's, look at how she's acting now, or look at what she's singing about now. It kind of, there could have been that backlash, or it would have been thought as not being genuine, even though it squarely is. It's obviously not contrived. But I think it did her a favor, because that would have been another hill that she would have had to climb. Yeah. That she didn't have to. So by not being that popular in Canada as she wanted to be, it actually unbound her. It actually unshackled her to not have to then follow that type of or be forced to follow that type of music by the record company or whoever who's in it just for money. By getting dropped from her label, that kind of freed her to say, okay, well, now I'm going to do this on my own terms. And because what do I have to lose anyway? I don't have a label, so let me just kind of now is the time to kind of to reassess and make adjustments, and that it was game on from there.
Yeah. I don't know if, but like I didn't even know about the first two albums initially, like when she first came out. To your point, Dean, and. Yeah, it probably was exactly what you said. If I'm going to put out these two albums in Canada and I'm going to be everything I'm told I'm supposed to be, I'm supposed to be happy and I'm supposed to be poppy and I'm supposed to make people feel good and I'm supposed to look cute, and they bomb, well, then what do I have to lose? I'm going to bare bones here. Like, I'm just going to give it to you raw. And what's the worst that can happen? You still don't buy it? Like, who cares? Like, at least I gave you honesty. And you're probably right, Dean. I mean, I would imagine that's exactly what happened. Like, it was like, what do I have to lose? Yeah. I gave you what you wanted and you didn't want it. So I'm going to give you what I want.
Now, you've even heard just snippets of those two records, by the way. Her voice was completely miles ahead of what that music was. I mean, she already had that voice, that distinctive, like, so the maturity to that, even then was, and I think she did pretty good. And, she had her following, she had her little, the little girls, chasing her with, Alanis and, which, an experience that she, probably loved at one point, but that she grew up and she moved on, and there was other things that came in
after a certain amount of time.
Right. Absolutely. And these were probably people telling her what to do, how to be, how to look.
Yeah.
And how much of those songs were actually written by her versus, we need to change that to make, because you need to project something.
Yeah,
so
need to make it more palatable, or
right. Yeah.
For the music fans, we're going to give like a minute, maybe 60 seconds to some tidbits. On You Ought to Know, you've got Dave Navarro and you've got Flea.
No, I learned that it was like
yeah. So you've got some Chili Peppers in there, but there's another. I'm going to ring the bell.
I just have to ask: does someone keep filling your glass?
We do have a Jeff Lynne. We have a Jeff Lynne connection here.
No way.
What? No way.
Jeff Lynne connection. Come on.
Yes, we
seriously.
Do. Yeah,
on tracks.
Okay. On tracks 2, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 12, Mr. Benmont Tench plays organ.
It's like 6 degrees.
That's 2 degrees. It's only 2 degrees, but Benmont Tench is on this. So there's some heavy hitters backing her. And actually, Taylor Hawkins, before he joined the Foo Fighters, was a member of Alanis' touring band.
Yeah.
So she, this was no joke. Like, she attracted some, either
they were very close too. Very close. Yeah.
Yeah. So either Glenn Ballard was able to arrange this or get these people, but that's kind of no joke on here. Having especially in '95, the Chili Peppers were like right in the thick of things. I mean, that was like. They were like the band of the moment at the time. So
you can't mistake that bass line. You cannot mistake that bass line. And You Want to Know.
I'd like to believe that they recognized her talent, and
I'm sure.
Far. They saw, and we keep talking about it, like Eric keeps referencing, her age. Like, I think she was an old soul, or she is an old soul.
Absolutely,
But I'm going to go with that. They really recognize this is someone that we need to pay attention to, and I want to be part of it.
Let me just run through a couple of artists that have cited this as their inspiration. You've got the likes of, it kind of, okay, so it opens some floodgates for like Fiona Apple, Shakira, Tracy Bonham, Meredith Brooks, right? Pink, Michelle Branch, Avril Lavigne. Avril Lavigne cites her as an influence. Katy Perry, Kelly Clarkson says, if it wasn't for her, she made me want to be a better songwriter. So not only did she make a great album, but the great artists have that ripple effect, right? It wasn't just her in her enclosed space. Yeah. She then, kind of said to other female artists that it's okay. It's okay to not be happy, or all songs don't have to be about breakups, like "Hit Me With Your Best Shot," or not that there's anything wrong with that. But the ripple effect that she had, and we've talked about that on the Jewel episode, is that whole kind of Lilith Fair kind of thing started, and Sarah McLachlan, and just a whole slew of female artists that really started to take some power back. Right. And kind of really say, this is our time. We've got something to say, and it's just as important as anything else. And it absolutely was.
She definitely kicked those doors wide open. I mean, the floodgates, they all come, but also, this is the part of it that I don't really care for when you hear stories about like, well, it's a trend now. Now it's a thing where all these women artists are coming out. Now, we could do this now. Whereas for the most part, these women artists were like one at a time, and we can't have several women artists playing on the radio in a row. We have to have like, one song in between 10, grunge, Pearl Jam and all these other guys, now all of a sudden it's like, it's a thing. So I don't know how to feel about that in the aspect of it becoming something. But it's great for the artists that are really, itching to get their stuff out there. But it's like, I don't like the idea of it becoming a trend that you could jump on that bandwagon now. It's a selling point now.
Well, unfortunately, that's the way the business goes, though, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
like that. Yeah, but
it's a blessing. It's a blessing and a curse, right? Because it's kind of shitty that we're going to capitalize on it, but. Mm-hmm. It also allowed these other artists to punch through, though.
Yeah, right? Capitalize on what on female artists, or
it became a thing. Like if Alanis was so strong, and because that record was a monster, and
we need more Alanis. We need more.
We need more. Now
so it wasn't you didn't. It had nothing to do with that. More female artists were.
No, not at all. It was the quality.
It was the quality of what they were putting.
No, because women weren't as predominant as some of the male groups, and this has been going on for forever. I mean, so. Yeah. But it actually, record executives, we start, see the monster though. We need to get on board with that. We need more, and that's the thing. The women took control of it. Of course, they took, great advantage of it. Lilith Fair happened because of that, and all these things. So, so it was great, but I just hate the idea of something like that having to be part of that shitty side of the business where it's,
they do everything. You look at Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. It's like when they find a niche that works, like, boy bands are the thing we're going to make, because they just want to make money.
They do the same thing. It doesn't matter.
Unfortunately, they do the same thing for everything.
This was a watershed moment. I want to read one quote. This is from Benny Anderson. From Benny Anderson. He's one of the B's of ABBA. Yeah. He has written. He writes and produces, along with Bjorn Ulvaeus, all the ABBA stuff. So this guy, and he's one of my favorite. ABBA's one of my favorite groups, just because they can write songs so well. This is what Benny Anderson said about this album. He said he listed the album as one of the 6 soundtracks of his life. I listened to this a lot when it came out, at a time when I wasn't writing pop songs anymore. It was a remembrance of solid golden pop from a fantastically talented woman with great writing and a great voice, and very nicely produced by Glenn Ballard. He's got to say that. Mm-hmm. It's one of the top 10 albums in my life when it comes to pop records, alongside Rumors and Hotel California. Does it stand, Courtney? Does it stand that high?
Well, I was bristling against it until he brought in Rumors and comparing it to the pop that is
I didn't like the pop
feeling. The pop that is the feeling. Like, I understand it's in that genre.
Pop meaning pop. I think meaning exactly popular. Popular. Yeah.
But when he compares it, I'm like, okay, that I can get behind. I mean, what I was gonna say before is like, being undeniable makes it so that others can be undeniable. And that's what opened the floodgates. Undeniable in every sense of the word. And then you can bring in those that are also undeniable. And that's how the Lilith Fair and all of those artists that came, luckily, that floodgate was opened by undeniability of this is going to be the next phase of female rock.
And I think to your point and to Eric's counterpoint is that, they needed to, just like anything that's popular, we need to replicate it. But here, the difference is that Alanis was doing this on her own terms, which then empowered other female artists to do it on their own terms, right? And not be a like with the boy bands. It was like NSYNC, 98 Degrees, like they were just kind of cranking them out, and those guys didn't.
No, that's what I meant. Exactly, the women, they took control of the situation.
Exactly.
Like that. Yeah, I know that. But it's just unfortunate that it had. Well,
that's the benefit.
It is the benefit of it. It is fortunate, and
the benefit was the empowerment that they were now able to get to do this. It wasn't like when Debbie Gibson and Tiffany came out. They were looking for the next pop, like Susie Q, and and those people were probably happy just to be recording. But again, Alanis is a different story because of the content of the music, the rawness, and her unwillingness to and her fearlessness to call out these things. Right, so she wasn't afraid to push all the chips in on the table, right, Christy?
She changed music. I'm grateful to have been close to her age and the age I was, where she came out, and like Eric said, and then all of a sudden we had, they weren't cookie cutters. Like Fiona Apple, she had a lot to say, and she was a fantastic artist.
Love her.
And you get, I enjoy Pink. You all of a sudden you got women artists because Alanis broke a ceiling for women, and it was like, okay, so we can be ourselves. And having been the age I was, and coming into womanhood at that time, it was like, oh, we don't have to follow all the rules that they kind of put out in front of us. And I know it sounds odd. And again, because we're in the scope of 2024, but when you go back to 1995, it was very different. And people who, like, not everyone that wasn't alive then, growing up then, realizes that it was a very different time. And I look at 1995, and then there's women who are like, well, should have been alive in the 50s. It really was. Yeah, but
should have been alive during the plague. That really sucked back then. You know, you want to talk about a shitty time? No.
40 BC.
We're gonna. Christy mentioned Dave Coulier, so let's just kind of talk about this a little bit.
She mentioned him by name.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing.
He came out and said it because he was like, I was an asshole and I'm tired of it, and he owned it. And apparently they got together. They made peace with it, and they were all good. So they moved.
But did Alanis say that it was about him though? I don't think
here's the thing.
He came out and owned it.
Here's the thing. So yeah, Dave, you know, this was famously about Dave Coulier, who's from Full House.
Bullwinkle.
You know, and in like 2008, he said, yeah, you know, this is about, you know, I'm the guy. And then Bob Saget said, I can testify that to that because the lyric, I hate to bug you in the middle of dinner. He's like, I was at his house eating dinner when and that happened. But then in 2021, someone interviewed Alanis and said and she said no.
Well, she kind
of.
Now,
is she just saying
like
no?
Carly Simon, you're so vain situation, right? Like everyone always assumes it was about Warren Beatty.
So she still denies it. She still doesn't say it was about him, but he's saying, it's about me.
I wonder if it was an amalgamation of like a bunch of different shitty
a bunch of married men she slept with.
Yeah. there were a few other suspects. There is there was like a hockey player about it, supposedly that she was seeing also. Like there was a couple of people that you know, actually Coulier said in 1997. He said that it could have been Mike. It could have been Mike Peluso, who was a hockey player for the New Jersey Devils. Matt LeBlanc, possibly from Friends. You know, and then Leslie Howe, who was the music producer of hers in Canada when she was doing those first two albums. So you know, the Courtneys. You know, there are round up the usual suspects because. You know, I don't know that Coulier wants to be admitting that. I hope he's not married still because he's really wrecking his life then if he really, you know, by going out there. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's something you want to. That's not a badge of honor you want to wear as the scumbag that this is written about.
Well, from what I read, and again, do what you want with internet research. He came out and said it because he was tired. He was tired of people asking him, and he said it just seemed better to come out and own it, and be like, yeah, I fucked up. Like I don't want to be that guy. Like I'm not that guy now, and I made mistakes. And there's something noble to that. Like I respect that much more than someone be like, no, not me.
Well, Christy, did he own up? Did he own up to it beforehand, or only when he got outed? So it's
really popular.
Exactly. Let's put the cards on the table. It's not like
how long was Full House off the air at that point?
Good point, Eric.
You know,
but he was still getting the residual checks. Yes. So it was a forced confession, but at least he at some point owned it. I mean, you got to take what you can get from Uncle Joe.
Well, here's what Alanis Morissette. Here's a quote from Alanis Morissette. Well, I've never talked about who my songs were about, and I won't. Because when I write them, they're written for the sake of personal expression. So with all due respect to whoever may see themselves in my songs, and it happens all the time, I never really comment on it because I write these songs for myself, not other people. Now, just because she's not commenting doesn't mean it's not him.
Yeah.
Of course not.
Mm-hmm. Right?
But, then that's, you just have to respect that. She's like, these are for me. Like again, kind of to like who she is and how she came out. I was like, it's not about you dick. It's about me.
She kind of predated Taylor Swift because Taylor Swift is famous for writing songs about ex-boy John Mayer and this guy, and
it's funny.
You know, how many boyfriends she's kind of gone through.
I know Taylor Swift. I have no disrespect for Taylor Swift, but I was like, I don't think I know any of her songs, and I'm like, is that wrong?
You know, like Shake It Off, and there's a couple of ones.
I don't know.
something about Romeo and Juliet or something like that. Juliet. I know a couple.
I guess we're not fans of Taylor Swift
like
here.
Something about Romeo and Juliet.
No, I respect Taylor Swift. I mean, you can't not, respect.
No, you can't not respect her. I'm just like,
everything. She's building talk about building an empire.
Yeah.
Geez,
yes, Swifties. I thought it was.
Yeah. Would you think that was a drug at parties?
No, I thought it was something on the floor.
Some Swifties. All right. Well, we're as we start to wrap up, we're going to talk about some favorite songs. We can't do an episode and not talk about some favorite songs. So I know, you know what? Maybe the guys will go first, and we'll let you guys close out. For me, the hits are easy, and this is another one of those albums, right? Like, we've referred to Billy Joel, The Stranger, and this is chock full of stuff. But I think for my money, I think the stuff that's not a hit, I kind of like that. Some of it's a little more harder edged, like Not the Doctor. I like Perfect. I like Right Through You. I like that. Some of that stuff because it's got a little bit of a not perfect. I like just because it's her voice, and it's just her, and she sings so clearly, and so confidently and so strong that I like listening to it just from a performance, but. I'd go with like Right Through You and Not the Doctor and, some of those kind of, non-single tracks that are just as good. Everything on here is top to bottom, like I said, back to front is a listen that you can kind of, it's like almost reading someone's diary. You almost feel like, oh, should I be here? But that's the great thing about it. But I kind of like some of the non-hit tracks. Eric, what about you? A couple?
Yeah, pretty much the same.
Of course, You Learn. I love that. Yeah, that's great.
You Learn is my all-time favorite track by her. But yeah, Perfect, Right Through You. I like the song about, was it Unforgiven? About Forgiven Catholicism and all of that.
Yeah.
It goes there as well. Religion, man. The hidden track, of course. But yeah,
Your House.
But yeah. But like Dean said, I mean, I every track is great on this record. It's just so good. But those in between tracks as well. I mean, they're just as good as any of the hits.
Yeah, they're not filler. It's not filler. That's
no filler whatsoever on this. A perfect album. Perfect.
Yeah, it's a great one. Courtney.
Yeah. Mary Jane is one of my favorites. But I take it different. I almost take it as talking to yourself. Like, what's the matter, Mary Jane? Like, it's your alter ego. Like, it's like, why are you doing this again? You're messing up. What is it? So that's my interpretation. Of course, the hidden track, it has a special place in my heart. Your House, and listening to it again is so like a foreshadowing for Uninvited, the song from the City of Angels soundtrack that is just, I feel like it's an ellipses, like it's a ... leading to her next. So those two really, Hand in My Pocket, listening to it again, it's almost like I've got one part of myself hidden. It's in my pocket. I'm not going to show you that, but I'm good. Yeah. And so that one really, like, for as poppy as it is, as popular as it became, if you look at it a little bit differently, those are my three that just I continually go back to that speak to me.
Cool. Yeah. Christy?
Just to Courtney's point, a hand in my pocket. Yeah, I don't know if I picked up on it when I was younger, but it's duality, right? It's you can simultaneously be two things at once, right? Like, so it's a great song. Forgiven, Eric mentioned it. It just, I confess my darkest deeds to an envious man. That line when I was that age and questioning. Catholicism and religion like really, really hit home for me. That was a very powerful song for me. Wake Up. It's a power. Like again,
damn,
really hit, really, really hitting on it. Like like you're okay with everything as long as it's not uncomfortable, right? You like snow as long as it's not wet. You like pain as long as it doesn't hurt. It's just really powerful. Like it's like okay, like that's
Not the Doctor is very similar. It's very similar content too. It's like I love you, but I'm not here to take care of you. I'm not your,
it's dependency. It's dependency. It's like I'm not going to wipe your ass for you. Like
and also looking at that from a more mature standpoint, like codependency. Yeah, but maybe they didn't ask for you to be the doctor. Maybe they just want to wallow in their own self, but you're taking it upon yourself. And of course you're going to get to the point where you're fed up with all of it, but maybe go back to like, did they even ask for you to be that codependent? And so it's like, so learning like, okay, where are we in this relationship?
But
like it's so powerful.
And not the doctor. It's like, I don't want to be your glass of whiskey or I don't want to be the food you're eating at midnight. Like it is. It's, but you're right, Courtney. Like, did they ask you to? But it's a great song.
I love the line where she's like, "I'm not your mother. I didn't carry
you my womb for 9 months."
Wow, that's
I use that line a lot when I'm like, I'm not your mom. I'm not dealing with your shit. But there's so many. I mean, the last track, obviously, Your House, because again, what it represents to the like I said before, it's the perfect ending to this album and bringing us to a supposed former infatuation junkie and
which I thought was great. A great
I
follow-up.
love that album.
Yeah,
I would happily do that album too. Where we just, again, like I said before, you can just I got it out. Now I'm ready to move on. So, but there's no bad song on this album.
No,
it's very hard. There's no bad song on this album.
There's not, but there are ones that resonate more.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
so
but like to your point, Dean, like it's like even like the hits, but then you go and it's like the ones that probably I love even more now are like Wake Up and Perfect. Like Perfect. I mean, you're dealing with like just. I mean, it's a heavy subject matter. It's like living, it feels like people living vicariously through their kids. Like as long as you're perfect, we're gonna love you. Society, your parents, whatever you're talking about. But the way she sings
it is very soothing and comforting.
Oh, yes, which is weird, right?
It's not in an attacking way. Not every song on this is like putting people on blast. It's there is playfulness. Like I love the video for Ironic. That's probably my favorite video of the stuff that she put out because it's just fun and it's playful and it's kind of like I said, she really adept at writing. At the wordplay and the wordsmithing that she does too. It's just
she was this was a woman artist that I was instantly taken with. Yes, I'm going to say it. I was attracted to her, but not because she was gorgeous or overly because she was good looking and sexy and all. But the sexiness comes out in all the other ways that she, like the way she is, the way she sings, the nervous tick that she has when she kind of her head kind of bobbles when that sort of thing, but goddamn that smile of hers. Sometimes that smile is like scary because it's like really like intense. Like sometimes her eyes will go wide and it scares you. It's like intimidating because she's meaning. Different things. There's like 20 different things that are going on in that smile, and who can forget, like, I think we brought it up in our cameo episode.
Yeah, I was just going to say, above all that, she's God.
She's God in Dogma. I'll never forget that. That blew me away.
And doesn't speak a word. So,
and a video from her latest record too, which I found on YouTube, which was This Is Why I Drink. I don't know if you guys heard that song.
So good.
It's so good, and she's sitting in the round and she's playing multiple characters, and one of the characters is the girl from Ironic, where she's wearing the wool hat and she's got the garb, and then she touches upon Forgiven, where the priest walks up to her and like goes to put his hands on her shoulder, and she just like shrugs him off. So there's like little like hints, like little Easter eggs of her own, that comes all the way back to this record. And it's just, that's an amazing video. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's,
it was a Broadway play in 2017, 2018.
I saw it.
You did?
I did. It was
you
great.
did see it. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us a little about, I heard it was like, this is a concept right? I mean, it's based on, they actually wrote a story based on, and they used the songs from the album.
They use the songs just tell the story. So of this young girl. So they just found a way to use all the songs in the album just to tell the story of this girl. So there's a scene with her parents, there's a scene with her boyfriend, but it was great. It was. I mean, if they ever did it again, I would recommend seeing it.
Yeah, nominated for a bunch of Tonys too. Yeah. So it had a good run, and it had a good impact as well. So
I saw it during the height of COVID too. Like it was like you had a mask, and it was
so
like
an empty theater.
No, it was. I think it was 20. I don't think it was. It must have been 2021. So I don't know if it's the height of COVID, but it was definitely. We were in the middle of COVID. It was. You had to wait outside. You had to get the pass to get in. Like it was like when the theaters wouldn't let you in without proving you were vaccinated.
Yep.
Like
you had to bring your card.
You had to bring my card. Show me your papers.
Cool. Courtney will give you the last word as the newest guest on the podcast.
Well, I mean, just everything. I saw the Jagged Little Pill also. I think it was 2022, and I saw it with Heidi Bleckenstaff, I think is her name. It's been played, like the mom character has been played by a few different actresses, but I've seen some of those videos, and then I saw her, and her embodiment of that character was amazing. So my final, like, just shout out was, if you see it, try to see it with that actress as the mom character. Yep. There you go. There's the yeah. See who was playing.
I couldn't throw it away.
Yeah. And just, revisiting the album just makes me, revisit that part of my childhood where you're growing into your adulthood and you're learning so many things about yourself. And she's like, it's
Heidi
okay.
Bleckenstaff.
Yeah. So fantastic. It's just like they did an amazing job bringing all of the songs. And they actually did bring the song Uninvited into it instead of the hidden track, because they play all the songs and it fit perfect. So it's just, just all of the things. But this album, Jagged Little Pill, it's always going to be up there.
Cool. All right.
Awesome.
That's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. Courtney, how do you think you did?
I spoke from the heart, just like Alanis does. That's all I can say.
You can expect.
You did spectacular. You did spectacularly. So, you have earned the coveted open invite to come back.
Wow!
Whenever you like, you can come on back onto the show. Thank you, Courtney. Courtney Cremeans, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks. We appreciate it. And Christy, thank you so much for joining us. We could not have done this episode without the two of you.
Thank you for doing it. I love this album. I cannot say that enough.
Yeah, it was either going to be this or Bing Crosby's greatest hits. Eric said we got to do Jagged Little Pill, but what about Bing? What about Bing?
We've been talking about doing this since year one.
He's like Bing. He's like,
we always knew though this has to be done with
people that lived it. People that lived it
from the female
women of a certain age, you say.
That's but that's going to do it. And this is available on all the streaming services. There is an expanded version of it, but just you don't need again, just listen to the album as with the track listings, and there's a remix of You Ought to Know at the end, and then you got to wait. Don't turn it off. There's a space, and then there's a hidden track. You got to stick around for it. It did not make it on the album though. So if you have an original LP, it's not going to be there. But anyway, go ahead and listen to Jagged Little Pill from 1995 from Alanis Morrissette. Again, 13th biggest selling album of all time. So this one is no joke, and it deserves to be listened to even now. It's maybe even more as relevant or even more relevant now. So go check it out. So that's going to do it. If you made it this far, you're on YouTube, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. They're right down there somewhere. There's a little heart. You hit that and then the subscribe, and you hit that and you'll get notifications whenever we drop a new video. So for Christy, for Courtney, and of course for my best friend Eric, this has been Dean. We got to get a little guy, a little guy tenderness, guy tenderness in there, We have feelings too, you know.
Is that the Wakanda?
We're not just the cheating scumbags, you know. So for Courtney, for Christy, and for Eric, this has been Dean, and we will absolutely catch you on the flip side.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.